Hi everyone, welcome to Entre-Elles. I'm your host, Amani Kiflemariam, and this podcast is a platform for women of the world to tell their professional success stories. Every week, I interview a woman who shares her professional journey and her personal goals. Whether she lives in Abidjan, Accra, London, Paris, or San Francisco, her human experience is universal. In this podcast, you will hear about ambition, perseverance, hard work, dedication, challenges, but also soul-searching and purpose. My guest this week is Amani Kiflemariam. Amani has been working in banking for almost a decade. She is a strong advocate for diversity and inclusion and the recipient of the 2019 Young Professional Award. She is also the founder and CEO of Amatte Coffee, a luxury coffee brand that embodies Africa's rich cultures and history of storytelling. Here is my conversation with Amatte Coffee's Amani Kiflemariam.
Hi, Amani.
Hi, Amani.
It's so nice to see you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you for having me. You know, you're my first in-person episode in 2020. So
what a privilege. What a privilege.
So you were born in Eritrea.
Yes.
And you grew up in the Sudan and the UK. So what was it like for you growing up in Africa?
It's one of the special memories that I have growing up in Africa. Beautiful, beautiful surroundings. I remember growing up like 10 minutes away from the sea in Port Sudan, smelling the sea salt every morning. Loads of family and friends and school, different colours. I remember I have good memories of the continent, and particularly, where I grew up in that part of East Africa. So it's memories I keep very close to my heart.
And then how old were you when you moved to the UK, and what was that transition like for you?
We moved with my mother and one of my brothers. There's 5 of us overall. When I was 9, and the transition, I have to say, it wasn't as easy for me. I grew up in London. It was quite challenging, mainly because of the different cultures, languages, and just different country. And I think when you come in, to the UK at the age of 9 and having to transition to the life of school, just different settings. And back home, you have life was really good. Where, for instance, you had people helping in the house, you had so much space, you had family around. It was a good quality of life. And then obviously when you come to the UK, quite often, for a number of reasons, it's not the same quality of life. So it's quite interesting. It was definitely a huge, it was a huge transition for me. It wasn't as easy, I would say, but obviously I adapted to it. And
you adapted well. So you then grew up in London and went on to study at Middlesex University. What did you study?
I did law. Yes, I did law. I did a law degree because I was a chatterbox when I was younger, and I had to be a chatterbox to be heard. Out of 5 children, being the youngest, it's like I have something to say. But yeah, I went to university. I mainly went to Middlesex University because it was literally 10 minutes from where I lived. I grew up around Hendon, Wembley Park, in London, and did a law degree, and then I went off to law school. So it's quite interesting. I grew up wanting to be a lawyer. But as you know, I ended up going into banking, which is, it was the next best thing.
So actually, how did that happen? How did you end up moving away from law and entering the banking world?
I would say initially, the reason I went into law was because I think most African parents also are like this, like my mother, where you have a few options. And the reason we moved from back home here was for the quality of education, because there's better schools here. There are some really good schools in the continent as well, but my mother thought this is the best place for us to study. I did law because my mother said you have medicine as options. It's either medicine, engineering, accounting, or law. So choose one. And I just went for law because we had one family member that was a lawyer. And then I did that. I didn't really know if I wanted to do that. It was mostly just wanting to do something that my mother had approved of, if you like. And then I did that, did the work experiences at Clifford Chance and White & Case City law firms, and just realised, actually, I don't know if I want to do this. And I went into banking by chance. I did consultancy at Deloitte for about 6 months, and then an agency called me up. They were looking for a junior analyst at Wells Fargo to work with the CEO of the region. And that's how I went into it. I went into strategy and just kind of ended up in that strategy, COO, risk kind of roles. So I would actually say it was by chance and just being at the right place at the right time. It kind of just, it wasn't really an intentional career move, if you like. I wasn't like, I'm going to be working in a bank doing X, Y, Z. That was never the intention. It just kind of happened. That's really my story. I know some people very much, this is what I'm going to do from when you're like 5 years old. But with me, it just happened by chance.
Mm-hmm. So the focus of our conversation today is not your banking career, although I do want to say that you are very successful in that space of your life. However, one thing I would like you to talk about, and that I know you are very passionate about, is diversity and the lack of minority representation in the banking industry. Obviously, it does seem to be improving, but I think there is still quite a lot to say there. And the reason why I'm asking you is not only because you are a strong advocate for diversity, but also because, contrary to some who use the word as the latest trend, you actually do the work of promoting and mentoring diverse profiles within the industry. So why is this important for you, and what do you think the industry as a whole needs to do better?
Absolutely. I think, for me, it's very personal. And what I mean by that is I have friends, black friends, obviously I have other friends as well, but specifically this experience goes for my friends who are black and some Asians, and we're incredibly smart, we've got the grades. When it came to getting a job, it was incredibly difficult. And at that time, we couldn't really understand why. So we're talking about rejection after rejection. Like, you just would be like, okay, I've got an email in my inbox, that's another rejection now. And it was just, it was very difficult. And when I kicked off in my career, I realized that when it came to key roles, there just weren't people that looked like me. And it made me think after a few years that I needed to change that, because for me, diversity, we overuse that word, but for me, it's equality. It's about how do we bring the best talent to the door so that everybody has equal access to these roles. That's pretty much it. And for me as a business, and I'm an entrepreneur, I want the best talent to come and help me succeed in my business. And what is the best? How do you know what the best talent is if you haven't brought all the talent out there? So it's very logical for me. It's like innovation equals meeting bringing people from different backgrounds and cultures, because we all think in a different way. So if you have people with different minds together and you need to solve a problem, you are more likely to come up with a solution if you have people from different backgrounds. It's really about that. It's not about box ticking or all of this stuff that some people say. This is about, you want to compete at this time where we are today, you need to bring the best talent, and that often means from different backgrounds, because our clients are changing. The businesses the regions that we are focusing on is changing. So it's no longer just catering to European companies. So because of that, I feel it's just me helping the firm that I work with, and also it's personal. As I say, if you're so good at what you do, you need to have that opportunity. It's about equality. I really see it as simple as that.
And also it's data backed now, because before it was people could sort of hide behind the fact that, but how do you know? And but now it's actually data backed. Like,
absolutely,
the companies that have the most diverse boards are actually more successful.
Absolutely, and we've seen that with like a number of reports being published by McKinsey and other kind of top consultancy firms. The numbers speak for themselves, you know, and it's about time that we listen to them. You know, in the last few weeks, we've seen an incredible achievement in the financial industry by Citigroup naming its first female CEO. You know, we have a long way to go, but it seems that some firms are now really using that data to make the right decisions. And she has every right to be there because she's good at what she does. And she hasn't shied away from being a woman and a female. She's taken time out to raise her children. It's incredible when you see stories like that, because quite often we are given examples of where certain women, they don't make it that far, but those who've done okay in the industry often don't have children, and often the only thing that they are focusing on is career. So it's just so nice to actually see that you can do it. It's Jane Fraser, right? You can do it that way as well. And I think the second question was, what more?
Yeah, what the industry can do as a whole to, you know, to make these better, actually, to be more inclusive.
Absolutely. So this is a really good question, because I think most people do want to do the right thing, but how do you get there? I think there's a number of things that you can do. I think we face two key issues, and that's when you recruit. Like, how do you bring the best minds, diverse minds to the table? And then the other piece is how do you develop that best mind if you manage to get it into the door? So the first thing is about ensuring that we are, you know, going to as many universities, like top universities, of course, but we need to be diverse. Like, we can't just go to Oxbridge. There's so many other universities out there. Like, for instance, you know, there's a number of times where I've worked where we've brought like 100 top talented black students from all the top universities like Oxbridge, LSE, King's, UCL, etc. It's about doing that and then making sure that those people they also have the same chances for being recruited. So it's about, where do you go and get your talent from? And I'm talking about graduate recruitment here. How about the professional recruitment? There, we need to challenge our HR processes and systems on our people. When you go and recruit talent, when you're bringing talent, when the agencies are bringing you talent, is that talent diverse? Is it going to, you know, it's not just about bringing a bunch of CVs that are just from the same background. So we need to challenge our existing processes, which quite often is quite difficult, because we're talking about a system that has been operating in a certain way. So that's one. And then the other thing is, so we challenge our HR processes, but we also need to challenge our managers. So the managers now need to challenge the HR. And then what? When you get a diverse pool of CVs, then what? You need to ensure that the interview panel is also diverse, because quite often, let's be very frank here, it's unconscious bias. We all want to recruit people that look like us, that sound like us, and that we know from outside of work or family connections. But I think it's important to be able to benefit the firm. You need to face your unconscious bias and think, do we have a diverse talent? And if so, how do you pick the best talent for the job? So that's kind of on the attract piece, the recruit piece. I think the second piece is the development. And with the development, I really do think it's about sponsorship. It's about equal processes and fair treatment in the recruitment, in the development process. I'm talking about promotion opportunities. I'm talking about training for managers for them to face their unconscious bias. I am talking about the sponsorship. Quite often, people get jobs before it's even advertised. Why is that? It's because someone is coming and tapping them on the back and say, hey, there's a role here, would you be interested? The role hasn't even been drafted yet. And so we need to also do the same for people of color. So I think if we do those two properly as firms, I really do see a change, because we can no longer operate in the same mindset. We need to grow as businesses, we need to change our ways, because obviously it's not working.
Yeah.
You and I had conversations on this topic of recruitment, specifically entry-level recruitment. You highlighted something to me that I hadn't even realized, But that actually happened to me 15 years ago when I joined banking. And that is the fact that often when you interview for the first time, you don't see the actual managing director or the senior recruiter. You see the current junior from the desk.
And then often that's an issue, because then that guy or that girl is looking often for someone who she can be friend with, or that looks like her and that she sees as a potential friend. And those young ones haven't been through any form of training in terms of unconscious bias or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So then you end up with, they do the first layer of screening, and then then the senior or MD director, whatever, then gets a pool that has already sort of been diluted, let's say.
Absolutely.
And it's so true, because that's actually what happened to me. Like that's I remember interviewing with a junior, and then after that interviewing with, and I told a friend that story. I interviewed for a role on a desk that was covering Spain, and I was just coming back from 6 months in Argentina, so obviously I was fluent in Spanish.
Yes.
I interviewed for so I applied for the role, and didn't hear back for a couple of weeks or something. Then a guy called me and started speaking to me in Spanish on the phone, so I responded in Spanish. And then he said to me in French, "Oh my God, your Spanish is so good." And like that, naturally, over the phone, thinking that it was okay. He says, I almost didn't call you because I saw that you had an African name, and I was afraid that you might have a strong African accent.
Oh my God.
And I was like...
This is...
insane.
It's unacceptable, yeah.
Well, yeah.
But this is the unconscious bias. Just some people don't say it, and some people it just comes out. This is what we're talking about. This is what's still happening today. And that's, if we're trying to compete in this industry and we're trying to ensure we have the best minds from all over the world, we need to make sure we break that cycle. And so, but you're absolutely fine. I think this is what's been happening historically. It's the reason why we're not seeing talent when it comes to people at top positions. Quite often you hear it's because, the reason there aren't any managing directors in the banking industry, or any kind of vice presidents if in the tech, or any senior managers of color, is because we don't have the talent. We don't have the pipeline. I strongly disagree with that. We have the pipeline, and we could have had more of the pipeline if we had challenged the entry level, because that's how 10 years down the line you see these senior managers. If you're not opening the door to them, or you're not selecting them from day one, how do you expect 10 years, 8 years time that you're going to find a managing director? So there's a lot of work to be done there.
Indeed. So in 2019 you won the Young Professional Award. How did it feel to be recognized by your peers as a young professional?
I would say, so someone put me up in the bank as senior manager. It's the Women in Banking and Finance Awards, Young Professional Award. It was a very competitive awards. It's a lot of thousands of people are put forward for this. I was delighted that I was the second person. The bank had won 2 awards that year in different categories, and I was one of them. So I was obviously very proud that I had managed to help the bank kind of get recognized. But I also felt delighted because obviously I worked very hard, and this is the first time a black woman had won one of these Women in Banking and Finance Awards for the bank. So I was very happy that my hard work and the influence that I have from my African mother and grandmother, it's kind of paying off that my hard work is being recognized. So it's good. It's very good to get that recognition publicly.
You're giving me a good transition, because so despite growing up in the UK, you maintain a deep connection with the African continent. Is that what led you to Amatte Coffee, and how come you managed to maintain that connection?
I'm very proud to be African. I'm very proud to be a black woman, and this is something that I always say to my nieces, my nephews, my family, my friends. It's very important because we come from a line of very strong African warriors and women. We are the foundation as to, humanity started from Africa. But a number of things happen, and this is why when people say to me, Africa poverty and all of this. I'm like, there's a reason why some of our countries in the continent are where they are, right? If we look, all we need to do is look at history, quite frankly. But African people are forgiving. They always smile, you know, and they are so hopeful, regardless of what's happened to us in the past and history. It's all in the books. I just love the resilience that people in the continent have. You know, they have this way of saying things have happened, but we look forward. They don't sit there, if you like, blaming or feeling sorry for themselves. It's more about, we are moving forward, we smile, we work hard. And so for me, it's a natural, because the woman I am today is because of these African women that have raised me, and they've instilled the values in me. So it's very important I am connected. And also I think it's so important to know your identity. You know, it's quite interesting, because when when my niece, she was about 5, she said, Auntie, she went to an all pretty much white school, very good school, but it happened to be, and her 4 best friends at that time were all white. And she came to me and she said, Auntie Amani, I want to change my hair. I don't want to be black, because the blob, they call them the blob. My best friends are all, they don't look like me. And that broke my heart. And we had to have that conversation, sit down and talk to her about the beauty, the history of our continent and the women of our continent. And so I feel a deep connection. I think it's very important to know who you are, where you come from, and to know who you are, you need to know where you come from. And I'm very proud of our continent as well. You know, it's the only diverse continent, I would say, where, I mean, look, just looking from the east to the north, like, we have so many languages, cultures, and so many different traditions. So I'm very proud of that, and it's something that I always kind of want to talk about, if you like. The deep connection to the coffee business is about exactly that. It's about telling the deep, rich history of the continent. So if you look at our first collection of coffee with the Amatte Coffee brand that I launched of 2019 February, it's about telling the story of Queen Amina, Queen Sheba, Queen Nefertiti, the Emperor's Blend for Haile Selassie. This is about educating those who are not aware of where we come from. This is what we're talking about. We're doing that through coffee, through delicious coffee, because coffee was discovered in Ethiopia back in the 9th century. Many people don't know that because they think it comes from Brazil. But coffee was from Africa, and it was taken away by the Arab traders through Yemen, and it reached Turkey, and then it came to the West. That's how coffee left Africa. But quite often we don't tell that story. So my job through the business is to talk about these incredible role models that we've had in the continent, sell all this, you know, kind of present the delicious top coffee, but working closely with African female farmers. So that is, the connection is, you know, is the pride of being an African, and wanting to get that story out and tell those who don't know about it. That's the you can tell I just could talk about this the entire day.
Oh no, that's great. You know, I was actually going to ask that question, because as you know, I grew up in Ivory Coast, in Côte d'Ivoire, and coffee is a very important commodity for the economy of the country. And I didn't know that story when I discovered it on your website. So.
Yeah, there's so much, like, there is so much richness in the continent. Yeah.
So now let's talk about your entrepreneurial journey. Coffee is a very crowded industry, right? It's a roughly 10 billion industry in the UK, but still growing industry. Was that a concern originally when you looked at it? Thinking, you know, yeah, it's a very competitive industry. Obviously, coming from banking, I think you know a thing or two about competition.
Yes.
But what was the angle on that?
And that's a really good question. You're absolutely right. The competition is fierce when it comes to coffee, and the reason for that is because it's so easy to enter. Anybody can come up with a coffee business. For me, it was about identity. It was about looking deep into who I am. And why me? Why my coffee business? When I realized that the best coffee, and you know, we have over 50,000 varieties of coffee in Ethiopia alone, and 20 different countries across Africa produce coffee. I realized that we give all this delicious coffee, but we are not included when it comes to the decision making and when it comes to the branding, whereas where you get the majority of margin. Just to give you an idea, and the FT did a breakdown of this, out of the £2.50 that you spend on a latte, on an average £2.50 for a latte, only 1p goes to the grower. And I thought, this could not be right. Let me look into this. And I started doing my research. I took my time. I spent about a year really coming up with the concept. And I was still working full-time in banking. And I realized that, okay, what we do is we grow the coffee and then we give the coffee away. And then Western companies, quite often men, white hair, grey men, would come and take and will buy the coffee at a price quite often not really reflecting the hard work of these female farmers, so they are being underpaid. And then that's it. And what I wanted to do was actually, how do I make these women the center of the story? And how can I sell this coffee in a way where I'm able to give back to these women much more than what they're getting right now? And so what we did, we started off with the market research, going back to Ethiopia, understanding the process, the entire life cycle. And I realized, okay, I need to bring myself, the identity, the women before me. So we're talking about the female farmers as well as all the stories. Basically, how do I tell the strengths and the resilience of the women of Africa? That was one of the kind of points to address. And how do I bring the best coffee? And in addition to that, and then how do we present this to the West in the marketing, the packaging, in a way where people just look at it and they want to buy it? So it's a lot of the coffee story for my business is about storytelling. Top coffee is usually less than 1%. We're talking about our coffees are graded from 0 to 100. It's quite similar to how the wine is graded. And our coffees are all 85 plus. So it's like top coffee. It's less than like 1% in the world under the category specialty coffee. So we're talking about premium, women being at the center. And then the third element of the brand is about the storytelling of the rich history of the continent. That was the core of the identity of the Amatte business. Amatte coffee brand. In addition to that, you have a black woman, myself, now basically entering this market, competing against men, and they often are white male that I'm competing with. So it's very different there as well. People haven't seen this story. Okay, here we go. This is someone who's worked in the banking industry now coming to do this, but she means business basically. We're telling our story. It's our coffee, we're going to tell our story, and then we're going to present it in a way where people really see this transparency. Where does your money go? So all this environmental social governance, the ESG component, we're bringing that to the heart. So that was the kind of, so after 2 years overall of looking at this in this angle, I realized actually I have a very good chance to compete. Let's do this. So overall, it took almost 3 years of putting it all together. And then in February 2019, was when it was launched. So I think we have a very good position. You've seen this in the last year that we've had a number of, really good traction and coverage on newspapers, coverage on magazines, and people want more of the coffee. They want to hear more. They want to hear more about Africa's story. Now we're doing a new collection. Now we are doing the rivers of the continent and the waterfalls. That's the new, so along with the wildlife, this is a new collection. So every collection is dedicated to a component of our history. The first was the royalties, and talking about the Queen Shivas, Nefertiti and Amina. Mm-hmm. And the second is about our nature. So every category has a deep story to it related to the continent.
That's beautiful. And where are you sold? So what's your distribution process? How do you, are you mainly direct to consumer? Do you sell mainly online? Do you have, are you looking to be distributed in stores? Are you available at multi-retailers? What's your strategy on that?
At the moment, we focus mainly on e-commerce, so majority of our clients buy directly from the website. We also have a number of different cafes that buy the coffee, but part of the investment, if you like, that is going to be made into the business is for wider distribution. So we're talking about trains, airlines, Selfridges, which is one of my targets, is Selfridges. This is where we would like to see the brand. At the moment, we are focusing on how do we do this in a most cost-effective way, and e-commerce happened to be the most cost-effective way of offering this to consumers.
And do you ship worldwide?
Yeah, we do. Yes, we do.
Just another question on the distribution. So. Obviously, Selfridges is here in the UK, but are you also looking at similar sort of venues abroad in other markets?
Absolutely, we are. My idea is to have the coffee globally in every store that reflects our values, and wants to focus on ESG. That absolutely is definitely on the list.
And I love your packaging.
Thank you.
It's very tasteful. Are you? So obviously, it's your baby.
Yes.
So are you involved in all aspects of the business, and do you enjoy it?
Yes, I love my business. I enjoy it. I am involved in absolutely everything, from the design to the website to the coffee selection to the tasting of the coffee, speaking to clients, etc. I think it's very important for startups, especially, that you are involved as much as possible. I am deeply involved. I love what I do because I look at the purpose. Every time I'm there at 1 a.m. working, thinking, oh my God, I'm going to fall asleep. I think about, why am I doing this? And I think that's what helps me to continue, because it's not easy. But when you look at, but the why is what helps you to move forward. I do love what I do, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. A portion of your sales go to the Amatte Fund. Can you tell us what it is and why you made that choice? Obviously, from what you said earlier, we know that women are a strong part of your identity. But can you talk about that?
Absolutely. I grew up with a single mother, strong African mother, with my grandmother as well, who helped my mom raise us. There's 5 of us. I am so grateful that my mother had decided to keep me and keep my siblings, even though sometimes things were tough and difficult. But I say this because I feel strongly about supporting orphanages and orphans, and I feel that there's nothing more different about me except for having a different mother that had decided to obviously raise us. And so I deeply care about orphans. Everything that I do in terms of giving is related to orphans. The Amatte Fund is about ensuring equality. I care about this deeply. This word for me means a lot. It's about God has given me what I have, and there's a reason why I have been given my voice, the woman that I am today, and that is to give others what I can. Not in a way where I'm donating. It's about fairness. I feel like the world is so unfair. Why do I have more than the other person when we're both humans? So how do I, distribute what I have? How do I help the other person to have a chance in life? And for me, orphans don't decide to be orphans. They have no choice. And we work closely with 2 orphanages, one in Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, the Kiran Mehret orphanage, as well as the second one, which is in Asmara, the capital of Eritrea, and that's the Samaritan Sisters. Both orphanages are run by nuns, and it's not easy, especially when you work in these countries. So for me, how do I help them complete their mission? It's quite interesting when you work with these women. These nuns, everything they do, they're not asking for anything back. Imagine dedicating your entire life to helping others. It's just remarkable. And here I am, I come once a year, I'm spending 2 weeks with them. When these women, every day, they dedicate their life. to these orphans. So the foundation, the fund is about being able, if we succeed, we will give more. And obviously separately, I work closely with them anyway. But because I wanted to bring some of my values and who I am into this business, I wanted to create that fund. So whatever we will sell, some of it will go back to these incredible causes. And also, like, one thing about the brand name, Amatte means to lead by example. That is my grandmother's name. And that's why I call the business Amatte, because we are trying to lead by example, the example that our ancestors have shown us and have given us. So it's about trying to give more. It's more than me, this business, if that makes any sense. So that's where the fund is coming in to the story.
So what is your vision for this company? Where do you want to take it ultimately?
I want to be able to be the #1 coffee company, which is African, but it's global. It's about being in certain supermarkets, as I mentioned earlier as well, about catering to the airlines and to places where, if they share our values, we've been very selective in terms of where we sell the coffee. The brand is not about trying to sell the coffee in a cheap way. It's not just about identity. The coffee goes somewhere where the person who buys it will be able to tell a story, the same story that we're trying to tell about the coffee, and the person drinking it also feels they are part of the journey with us. So I see this brand being on the shelves of places like Waitrose, places like Selfridges, and boutique cafes where they come to the journey with us, and we can make the world a better place.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I feel very privileged to be here, Amani. This is great. This is what we need, I think, to be able to connect, especially outside of the continent. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you to Amani for taking the time to chat with Entre-Elles. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app and subscribe to be notified of new episodes. While you're there, please leave us a 5-star rating and a review to support us. You can follow us on social media at Entre-Elles Podcast. Thank you for listening.